Hello and welcome to the Michigan and Trumbull Podcast. I'm Alex Freeman, normally joined by Luke Jaconis, but today joined by Troy Urdahl, author of the book Chasing Influence, Transformational Coaching to Build Champions for Life. Troy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the way we normally start these interviews is with a little disclosure of your fandom. So obviously we're a Detroit Tigers podcast. What is your baseball fandom?
You know, some of my best baseball memories, especially from the 80s, are of watching the Detroit Tigers. Unfortunately, it's from 1987 when the Minnesota Twins were playing the Tigers in the playoffs. I'm a Minnesota guy, and so my fandom lives in Minnesota. I think that might mean I'm doomed. I'm committed to a life of misery because I haven't had a championship since '91 from the major sports. Besides the Lynx, the Lynx had a nice run.
That's true. That's true.
I'm a Wild fan. I'm a Vikings fan. I'm a Twins fan. Those are my teams, and every year they let me down.
That Vikings season this year, I hoped for more in the NFC North race out of them, but obviously the Kirk Cousins injury kind of threw the whole season under the bus. What are your thoughts on how the football season ended up and where the Vikings are going?
You know, I think we learned how valuable Cousins is. Like many people, there is debate on that in Minnesota about the value of Cousins to the team, but I think a lot of people realize how significant he really is to the team's success. And then Justin Jefferson was hurt for a good chunk of the year as well. So when you lose Cousins and when you lose Justin Jefferson, it's gonna be a tough year, and that's what it ended up being. We'll see what happens here with free agency, because those are a couple of really big signings that the Vikings have to sort out between the two of them in terms of what the future looks like, and then the draft coming up, obviously, and what direction they'll go with that, whether they'll look for a QB and a replacement for Cousins now or in the future. So it is interesting times for Vikings fans right now.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time all around the NFC North. Not that, and I promise listeners we'll get back to baseball in just a second, but wanted to touch on football because obviously it's a decent time to talk as a Lions fan about football. But you know, with the Lions basically running it back, with the Vikings with these decisions to make, with the Packers apparently 2 or 3 years ahead of where I think everybody thought that they would be, and then the Bears with all of the pieces to put together something good with a ton of draft picks available, with the wonderful decision to be made of having Justin Fields, or we can go number one again and pick up maybe the next franchise quarterback. It's a great time in the NFC North for some football. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and I think there's something that we can all share in that, and that's a disdain for the team from Green Bay. In my house, I have 4 kids. We don't allow them to say the P word. They can't say that. So it's the green team, the team from Green Bay. But I don't know that any of us thought they were going to have another potential legendary quarterback in the making. And it looks like we might have to contend with that for years to come again.
Yeah, it's just rude. It's not fair. They shouldn't be allowed to do it. Somebody should step in. But let's talk baseball. Let's talk the Minnesota Twins, the favorite in the American League Central yet again. One of the things that we've been talking about on this show is that the Central race really feels pretty wide open because not a lot of moves happened to really change the makeup of these rosters, which is one reason why I think the Twins are favored. They've done it before with more or less this combination of guys, and there's no reason to think that they won't. What are your feelings as a Twins fan heading into the season?
A bit of the status quo, isn't it? That I don't know. With all due respect to the Central, I don't know how much of a compliment that is to be the favorites in the Central right now. As you look up and down rosters, there are actually a lot of fresh faces and new names within the Central. And a lot of teams trying to reestablish where they might fit in that, because I think it is up for the taking a bit. The Twins are going kind of standing pat with where they're at, and I know that management ownership recently said that they're capped out, that they're not going to be going for any big moves or spending big dollars. And Carlos Correa said that's fine. We've got the guys we need in the clubhouse right now. So I want to believe Carlos. I want to believe him. But boy, pitching's important. Pitching is a significant part of the game, and I think that's the part that's untested and unproven, and that might make the difference for the Central this year.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely been the struggle for the Tigers the last few years has been not necessarily not having the pieces, but keeping the pieces healthy in terms of a pitching staff. And obviously there were you know, very down years for the Detroit Tigers the last few years. But it's a very young core that seems poised to make some moves. We obviously made a few additions on the pitching staff there. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm always curious when we talk to Twins fans about your take on Carlos Correa. Obviously, a guy that we wanted, a guy that then opted out, tested the market, and then there were some questions about health with him. Like, how comfortable are you with Carlos Correa being the franchise shortstop?
Boy, it looked pretty questionable at the start of last year. That's for sure. And I think I don't think it's an inferiority complex, but in Minnesota, there's kind of a, do you want to be one of us or not? You know, do you like us or not? Probably an upper Midwest thing. You know, a lot of people refer to it as flyover country. So there's always that question of, do you want to be here or not? And so when he tested the waters, I think a lot of people were like, all right, that's fine. You don't want to be here. But then he came back, and it was a bit of, all right, he's our guy, because he wants to be one of us. And he seems like he's a wonderful teammate, and he seems like he's a fantastic clubhouse leader, and the right guy that you want leading your team. And I think that is, sometimes we overlook that. We look at the stat line so much, but there's so much that goes into that team chemistry and putting the right pieces together in the locker room, not just on the field. And I do think he is that guy. The other part in Twins territory that fans really seem to take seriously is how players do carry themselves. For whatever reason, that goes into the fandom equation up here. He plays the game the right way, and he's a easy guy to root for and cheer for and want to do well. Hopefully, some of those power numbers are a bit better this year, because we could use some more offensive production.
We're saying the exact same thing about our big money shortstop in Javi Baez. That can you return to being productive, Javi Baez? That'd be great. The other guy, obviously, that comes up in terms of the injury bug is Byron Buxton. How I actually didn't even realize this. I'm sure you did, as somebody who pays more attention to the Twins day to day. But Luke brought this up 2 weeks ago, I think, that Byron Buxton played in 86 games last year. Just a very short season in terms of numbers. But obviously a guy that, if he can stay healthy, Byron Buxton is a very scary guy to be facing in the Central. How are the views on Byron?
You know, I was asked last year a very good question. I don't know that there's a right answer to it. Is how valuable is Byron Buxton as only a DH, right? And what's his career look like if he's only a DH? I think the reason that Byron Buxton is so dynamic and such a valuable player, and the special talent he is because of his ability to play such tremendous defense and what he can mean to the outfield, and then come do it at the plate as well. I don't think he actually is as good of a offensive player. I don't think his production is nearly as good when he's not in the field. I think he needs to be doing both, and that's the key this year, is to get him back out into center field, where he's not only producing runs from the plate but taking them away as a defender. Best in the game. When he's in center field, he's the best in the game. I don't think we can say that we can't from the plate, right? Offensively, he's not the best in the game.
Yeah.
Defensively, can legit say he's the best in the game. And so when he was a DH, need to cut down on strikeouts. And I think we can say that across Major League Baseball, we need to cut down. So he's not unique to that. But between Buxton and Correa with injuries last year, and then the other really exciting and no longer prospect, he's proven himself, but Royce Lewis, and going to be another phenomenal impact player. If we can keep them healthy, I think that really is a key. Keep them healthy and get some quality outings from the staff. I think that's the key to the Twins' success for this year.
Now, Target Field is one of the stadiums I've not yet had the chance to visit. So I'm curious, what is the in-stadium experience like at Target Field?
I've been able to get to a number of stadiums. In Target Field, I don't think this is biased, still is right up there at the top. I know that I haven't been to Pittsburgh, I haven't been to San Fran, and I hear those three fields in the same conversation. And it's usually San Fran, Pittsburgh, and Target Field. They had a small footprint to build it into, and they shoehorned it into right off of downtown Minneapolis. The sight lines are pretty incredible, and they did a real nice job of just the ballpark feel, being able to walk around the concourse. And so it has a quaintness to it. Still a big stadium, but has a quaintness to it, and sight lines are great. It's interesting because my family, we took a road trip once to go see hockey rinks, and so we went to Chicago. From Chicago, we went to Montreal, and then to Ottawa, and then Chicago, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. It was about Ottawa where I realized all these rinks are the same. They're the exact same. And it's, I thought I was going to go on a tour where I was like ballparks, where they're all different. They all have their little quirks and differences. All the hockey rinks were the same. I mean, some differences, but the ice sheet is the same. They're all a bowl all the way around. And so I love going to ballparks. And Kauffman's right up there at the top for me, and Target Field. And they do a great job with the concessions too, with the food experience, which maybe I shouldn't value as much as I do.
No, it's very, very important. What is what's the specialty at Target Field? So when I do get there, what should I make sure I eat?
When I go, I have the Red Cow burgers. So it's ground beef and bacon. So it's ground bacon with the ground beef, little slider-sized burgers with mustard. But they theme a lot off of former Twin legends. And so there's a bar for Kent Herbeck, Tony Oliva, Rod Carew. There was a Cuban sandwich for Tony Oliva that's popular as well. Yeah, so you'll have some good options for sure.
I love it. Obviously, one of the names that always pops to my mind when I think about the Twins in recent years is our shared history with Ron Gardenhire, who Luke and I have often talked about on this podcast, because we started this podcast in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and then in the midst of also, the Tigers coming off just one of the worst seasons in the history of the franchise, and Ron Gardenhire managing that team, being dealt just an absolute terrible hand, knowing that he wasn't going to win, he wasn't going to be able to win, but we always felt like he led the team with just a great grace and did the best in those circumstances. We love Gardy. I'm curious what, as a Twins fan, your feelings on Ron Gardenhire are.
Well, we share a few baseball legends. Jack Morris is obviously another one that we share. Yep. And with Gardy, Twins fans love Gardy. They loved him when he was here. He even, his kind of swan song when he was with the Tigers still got incredibly positive receptions from Target Field and from Twins fans, which is really neat when you're managing another team and the crowd is giving you a standing ovation. That doesn't happen much. And so I think that really shows how much Twins fans respected and liked Gardenhire. And I think he represents maybe a dying age of managers where he was fiery. Tigers fans know this. He would protect his team and his players, and didn't mind getting booted doing it, but they always knew he had his back. And I think that's why players really loved playing for Gardy. He was going to push you, and he was going to drive you to be your best. But they knew that Gardy had their back, and he'd show that on the field. He wasn't ever afraid, even in press conferences, to stand up for his guys. And so I think it was the same experience for those Tigers players that had the opportunity to play for him that Minnesota got to see for a decade.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of our standing complaints is a strong word about AJ Hinch as the Tigers manager, is that we're like, man, I would like to see him come out and yell a little bit, have a little bit of fire. But I do agree that I think that breed of manager is no longer who's around, for better or worse. That we just don't have those guys who are going to come out of the dugout and get themselves tossed, 10, 15 times a year. We're going to see him maybe get tossed once. But I think that's a good transition into talking about the book. Let's talk about the book, Chasing Influence, Transformational Coaching to Build Champions for Life. I guess to start us off, we should disclose there's a great audiobook version available. If you like my voice every week and would like to have me read you this book, you're welcome to go check that out on Audible, or you can also get it where all fine books are sold. I think in Kindle format. You can get it paperback, hardcover. It's a great read. I really enjoyed it. I will disclose I don't always enjoy books that I'm doing the audiobook of, but this one I did actually really enjoy. Fantastic book. Why don't you give us the overview, Troy, about the book?
Well, you did a wonderful job. I think you're the perfect partner for voicing it. So thank you. And what I learned along the way after writing the book was that people are busy, and not everyone has the ability to sit down and read a book. But people will listen to a book, especially as they're working out or riding in the car or whatever it may be. I'm a career coach and athletic director. So I've been working in a school all my professional life. And I never thought I'd write a book. But when the pandemic came around, actually it was kind of in some of the waning moments of the pandemic, my family snuck away and we got to Mexico. And it's when the travel bans have been lifted, obviously. And I tested positive for COVID. And I ended up stranded in a resort hotel room for an extra week as the rest of my family came back home to Minnesota. It was during that week where I really fleshed out the book. And it's got a baseball theme and backdrop, but really it's a book for anyone who wants to have a positive influence on another person's life. And I would even include oneself in that. And so it's a book about leading yourself and a book about leading others from experiences that I've gleaned over the last couple decades several decades as an athlete. And then as a coach, and then activities director, where I get to see fantastic coaches in action every day.
Why baseball as the kind of central metaphor for the book?
Well, my sports were football, hockey, and baseball. And so when I came out of college and got my first teaching job, I think I would have been happy coaching any of those sports. But probably especially hockey or baseball. I was lucky to get a baseball coaching job right off college as a young teacher. I have the same job now that I did then. And I think that was probably the best fit for me. I think coming out, I would have loved to have coached any, but in the upper Midwest and in Minnesota, there is a really rich amateur baseball tradition. So town ball is amateur baseball, town ball, where there's 300 plus teams dotting the state of adult baseball. Super competitive adult baseball. I mean, many of these top teams would be competing with beating any college team, especially at the D3, D2 level, because they are a collection of college baseball players. You'll have guys throwing 90 plus without question.
Wow.
On any summer night playing for these amateur teams. So there's a really rich baseball tradition in the state of Minnesota. And that really helped me with a storyline about a transformational coach who's making this impact in the lives of others much of the time without even knowing it. And I think it's a story that most of us can share and can relate to about the significance and importance of a caring adult coach in our lives where they're in it for all the right reasons. And so a coaching mentor of mine took the shape of a fictionalized character. And so I combined myself, coaches I've had, a coaching mentor of mine into this fictitious coach, Stick Olson, uh, and told the story about both some hardships in his life, and then the triumph of sport and how it really can rally and heal. And in my case, my purpose is about using sport to make the world a better place. And I truly believe that transformational coaches can do that.
Yeah, I think one thing that really struck me about the use of the baseball metaphor, as opposed to like if it was a football coach or if it was a hockey coach or if it was is this kind of idea that there's not that there aren't traditions deep in those other sports and in all other sports, but there's something about baseball tradition that feels so ingrained. And then like as a leader and as a coach, the way that your characters stick, and then like you I assume as a coach and other coaches that you've worked with have to marry that tradition with new generations of players and like the changing times around us. But the baseball field is still the baseball field, and it still needs the care and tradition and the take that it's going to take. So I think that was a really, really powerful metaphor for me as a reader in the book.
And baseball lends itself well, as you mentioned, for a number of reasons. Such history in the game, and the history of baseball in many ways mirrors the history of America. And so there's this long parallel journey of the game of baseball and our country. There's downtime in baseball that doesn't happen in a lot of sports. Football, it's another play 30 seconds later. Hockey, I guess you get time between periods, but in baseball, part of the beauty of the game is there's a pitch, and then we can analyze it, we can talk about it, we can see the movements happening in front of us, and then there's another pitch. And so those downtimes and those moments of the game really give it a different pace that allows you to tell a story like I did with the book. And so I think the ballpark, you mentioned the fields, there's something about a pristine baseball field or ballpark. We were talking about that when visiting different professional stadiums. There's something about a ballpark. I love hockey, but there isn't really the same thing with hockey arenas. I don't ever really hear people talking about visiting stadiums for NFL teams. I'm sure people have and do, but there's something about ballparks. You hear about ballpark tours. I mean, people arrange ballpark tours where there's busloads of people and they go from field to field because of the beauty of the game. And I think that really helped with the story, just the beauty of the game and the time to talk, and the camaraderie that goes with that.
Yeah, I think that there is something that you think about, like I'm sure you've experienced this as an activities director. Like you can kind of purchase a nice football field. Like you can like literally go purchase a nice field, and then it can even get plowed in the winter, all of those things, and it just like is going to be fine. But because of the mixed elements that are required of a baseball field, that you have the infield, the outfield, the dirt paths. Now, obviously, there are fully turf fields. I've seen them, but there's something about going to a field that has those mixed elements that requires a level of care that other field types maybe don't necessarily. That you can really like see, as you talk about in the book, like the reinvigoration of the stadium, the recovery of the stadium, that you can see visibly that that somebody cares about this place, about this community, about this town, which also seems so important as an element of leadership, the ability to show that you care about the place where you are.
Yeah, there's a reason they're beautiful, and it's not. It doesn't just happen magically. The reason they're beautiful is because someone or some people are taking incredible care of those fields. All right. We can all also probably imagine that rundown field, neighborhood field that doesn't get any time and attention, and how bad it looks. But the beautiful field that all of us can hearken that image of, there's a reason it's beautiful. It's because a person or people are spending a lot of time and energy edging that dirt grass edge, manicuring that mound, making sure home plate is perfect, weeding the warning track, cutting the field into those meticulous stripes, and making a design and a pattern. That takes a lot of time and care. And I think that's in part what goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, the leadership qualities. It's a wonderful metaphor for taking care of people as well.
Troy, what do you hope that readers take away from the book?
The power of influence, and that a person can have a tremendous impact on the lives of others, and that we might not know that in the moment, that it might take years before we fully know the influence that we have on others, and that really, in the end, life is all about relationships and making a positive difference in the life of another person. I think in sports, we get so wrapped up with the winning percentage and the wins. It's why pro sports are entertaining. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And at the youth level, high school level, and college sports have changed. There's also nothing wrong with wanting to be successful and wanting to win. But really, success means something different in youth sports and community-based programs. And it is about building community. And it is about making better people, not just better athletes. And that really is what this book is all about. With a sports theme, but I think really it's for any parent, any leader, for any walk of life, from the boardroom to the hard court. Someone can get some good stories, examples, metaphors. Tried to fill it with relatable quotes and anecdotes that anyone could pull from.
Troy, where can folks get the book? Where should they go pick up their copy?
The easiest place is probably through Amazon. For the audio version, Audible is the place to go. It is available a few different places, but Amazon and Audible are probably the easiest bets.
The book is Chasing Influence, Transformational Coaching to Build Champions for Life, written by our guest here, Troy Urdahl. The audiobook narrated by yours truly. Make sure to check it out. This has been the Michigan and Trumbull Podcast. We'll see you next week.